From steering an $8 billion investment portfolio across Nigeria, Ghana, and the UK to launching game-changing platforms for women, youth, and BIPOC entrepreneurs in Canada, this speaker's journey is a masterclass in what it means to win and help others thrive while at it. Through her work at CASA Foundation, she's launched nationally recognized initiatives like WEEX, CASA Venture Labs, and the Black Advisory Hub, amplifying voices, unlocking funding, and driving real economic inclusion. As CEO of InvaCap Corporation, she's championed bold investments like West Africa's first water park and Entrepreneurs Point, a thriving incubator for diverse founders. She's a strategist, investor, mentor, and educator, passionate about building bridges between continents and creating pathways for the underrepresented communities to succeed. Join us in welcoming Dr. Olutoyin Oyelade.
Okay, thank you. All right. Good morning again. I'm not sure. Yeah, we say in the morning. It's great to be here. It's really, really great to be here. And so the first declaration is we're going to keep this. PB and PB Global. We're going to pray, and this is a giant stride, and we believe that this is where we're supposed to be. And then from here on, then we keep moving forward, and we keep growing larger and larger. So I claim this space for us in Jesus' name. All right. The last time I was here, I was, to speak, I was at another location, and I think it was a much smaller one. All right. So it's great to see great things happening around us. I know we already said a prayer, but I'm just going to quickly say a little one of mine, if you don't mind. Heavenly Father, we thank you. What a joy to be in your presence again this morning. We give you praise, our God and our Master. We give you glory. We give you honor. We give you adoration. Our God and our Maker, take our mouths, each one of us as we speak. Make it the pen of a ready writer. Help us to speak as your oracle, and let the lives of people be transformed continually. In Jesus' mighty name we have prayed. Amen. All right. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us this morning, I would say. Last night we spoke at Africa Day. Africa Day is tomorrow, so we celebrate that every year. But then, of course, because it's a weekend, we decided to celebrate again yesterday in Ottawa. That was at Carleton University. And a couple of the great people in that hall asked us a few questions when it was Q&A about the Africa we want. You know, it's an Agenda 2064 by the African Union, the Africa we want. And as they were asking, he had a long list of, so how do we do this? Because if you remember, Canada has a way of, their relationship is more of exploratory with Africa, right? So it's all about the extractive sector. And so as they asked those questions, what else can we do? What are we going to do? You know, people are not doing business, and we're very conservative here, and so it's really difficult to trust people. And so the direct answer to that is we will live the Africa of our dreams from today, because when they see us living the Africa of our dreams from today, then people will also get to invest more in us. So those were some of the answers. And then, of course, I'm sure we can talk about a few of the other things that came up, because a lot of the Canadians are also looking for people like yourself and myself, yourselves and myself, to do business with, because they are conservative, but they see us. And the values they see in us, the values that we espouse from time to time, are the things that they hold on to. They're just looking for trustworthy partners, and a lot of them have already started. So I said that, I quickly said that again to build up on what the earlier speaker said, to say to us that we are actually ready. We are at the forefront of, history, making history as we build our businesses, so that they can also invest in us some more. They're already doing so now, outside of the extractive sector. So I'm just going to encourage us and start with that this morning, that we're on the right path, as many of us have started running our businesses, and we just need to build up and scale and look for additional partners to take it forward. All right, thank you again. This morning I'm going to also say quickly thank you, PB Global and PB. We call them Pastor Bolarinwa and Pastor Bumi. So Pastor Bolarinwa is the global pastor lead, and then Pastor Bumi is the one we see here every day. So she's local here with us, but they're both PBs, right? So one is global, one is local. Thank you again for having me here. Pastor Godman, thank you so much. We really appreciate you. Thank you for all the work of God you do. and the work of ministry and for transforming the lives of people. May God bless you richly for it. All right. Okay, I do have some slides. I'm going to start with a quick story. It was in 2008 when we had the global financial crisis. And that global financial crisis took a lot of people out from their comfort zone. A lot of people, I'm sure a lot of you remember, started from the US, spread across the nations. I think I was rounding up my program at the Wharton School then in the United States. And we felt invincible. A lot of us, CEOs from Nigeria and so on, were there, sitting pretty, continuing our work. We didn't know it was coming to catch up with us. You know how some people just feel like he's not going to. But you know what? By 2009, early 2010, in fact, 2009, it was all over. Nigeria had gotten caught up with the global financial crisis. At that point, I was the group treasurer of Intercontinental Group, and so we had a large portfolio, particularly in the foreign markets, a large portfolio, owing and so on. And I just happened to be the group treasurer at that particular point. It wasn't the right hat to have been wearing. But I guess it was those challenges. I think it was that experience that has actually brought me here. And that's why I think I'm speaking to you today, too. It was at that point I had spent about 17 years, out of which about 6.5 years I'd been group treasurer from London, UK to Ghana, and a lot of the other branches. We had 365 branches, 12 subsidiaries, 25,000 people working, and I was a group treasurer. And so what do you do in that situation when you get caught up with that? As some of you might know, that bank is matched with Access Bank today. It's no longer there, so a smaller bank took it over. But, it was a major shift for us. We didn't see it coming. It was actually, as a matter of fact, earlier that year, we had just won, the top bank in Africa by the Financial Times of London. So we had a lot of things to hold on to. We were really big. But then that got caught up with us. And so it was like everyone was in limbo before then. So that was 2009. 2005, my husband, who I recognize today, thank you again, architect Oyelade, he's right there in the crowd. Thank you again for coming with me. He had actually taken it in his wisdom that, he said he wanted us to relocate. It was time to take the children, to school abroad, and that, Nigeria not stable, a lot of things anyway. So he took that decision and said, okay, we're coming. And so we landed in 2005, but maybe because of my job, and I guess I was, I felt it wasn't time yet. And so I was shuttling, and that was the story. And by the time the financial crisis happened and we're just running up and down and we didn't know what to do, home was where I had to come back to. And so although we had settled here since 2005, I didn't come in until 2011 when I finally resigned from Intercontinental. But there was a lot of challenges, a lot of demands, a lot of authorities, regulatory reporting, things that we never envisaged. And so a lot happened in that window of time. I resigned, I came in here, and I had to start all over again. It was almost like, it was the biggest shock of my life, and that's just the truth, this is a Christian gathering, so you understand when people have waited on the Lord. I waited on the Lord for about 4 years thereabouts before I had my first child, and so I thought it was the biggest deal that could ever happen to anyone in life. But when the global financial crisis happened, maybe because of my role, I had to do reports to regulatory authorities, enforcement agencies, and a lot of those types of people. It was really a big deal for me. And so I had told people around us that I wasn't going to come to Canada. It was just the truth, because I really didn't see where I could actually start from, maybe because of the work I did at that time on my role. I didn't know how to start again. But God works in mysterious ways. It was exactly what I ran away from all those years that I now came back to Canada to start doing. And so I landed in Canada, started over after resigning in 2011. And the question was, what exactly am I supposed to do in a land like this? And that's just the truth. I applied to jobs, and my husband looked at me again and said, after how many years as group treasurer, you are vice president of one of the foremost banks in Africa. You're going to start applying for jobs? To do what? But it was a job I knew how to do. I had never done business before. And so I say that again to us this morning, as I go into my slides, to say to us that perhaps might be the story of a few of us in the room today. But starting again, as difficult as it might look, as it might appear on the face of it, might not be as difficult as we think. That's exactly what I had to do. It was architect Oyelade who said to me, you shouldn't be working for people anymore. You've done a lot of working for people. You've gone to so many schools. You should actually build a business and have other people work and support you as you do that. And so thank you again for making us do that. Next slide, please. Today we talk about finding purpose in transition. And so I'm just going to share a few points with you. The first being the fact that you do not actually lose your value when you leave your country, and you do not lose your leadership when you start over. So the titles were gone, not group treasurer. Everybody sees you in the, they see you in the banking hall, they get up and all of those, or they recognize you on the streets and so on because you're signing all their credit facilities and so on. The title is gone, but who are you after all the title is gone? Because indeed, you are actually not the title if you really understand who you are. And so that's where we started from. Next slide, please. The power of transitions is complex, but it's purposeful. If you really lost your job, as I did, because my job was a big deal to me, you had a lot of perks and so on, and I'm sure a few people might understand that. But a job loss could actually provide you some clarity, some purpose, you like reinventing yourself. Where are you going to start from? That's when you begin to, you put on your thinking cap. Where am I going to start from again? What have I done? What do I know how to do? And so on. And that's exactly what happened to me. And I think I'll have some time to share a bit. I already talked about that. Next slide, please. So that's the story I just told. Next slide, please. Now, reinventing leadership. For me personally, the first thing I did, and I'm going to share a few tips. After going around like that, I did apply for those jobs because I really didn't still want to rely on business. I'd never done business. It says go do business. Anyway, I applied for jobs secretly. I did all, a few of those things. I'm not just going to sit here because I'm actually used to working. You can't even understand it. Sometimes it's 1 a.m. in the morning. You're just leaving the office. So it's actually very frustrating when you are not actually putting your hands to work sometimes. I mean, for people who work, for some people, they're homemakers and they do a fantastic job of that. But if you are really used to the marketplace, workplace, you got to do your work, you got to put your hands to work. And so I love my work, and I love to actually work. So what I did was, after applying for a few jobs, got some interviews. As a matter of fact, one of the interviewers said to me, you'll be frustrated, and I'm not going to mention the name of a bank because I was looking for a job in investment banking, but he said, you'll be frustrated working because this resume, I'm not really sure what, yes, we give you a director, but sometimes you're a director, you're sitting in the banking hall, in the branch office, you're in charge of a regional office, it won't be the same for you. And so you've just got to you got to tell us exactly what you want to do, and if you think you'll be able to cope with this, because we don't want to see you resigning in 6 months and so on. And it was when I discussed that architect said to me, look, we're going to put some funds to this. Go think of the business you want to do. And that's how we founded CASA Foundation. The first thing that came to my mind, I must mention, in the process of all of this transition that I particularly went through, I had to travel several times to Nigeria to answer to some authorities because of the banking issues. And so in the process, it was on one of those occasions, in transit again, as I was on the lounge of, coming back to Canada on an occasion, I took a paper napkin and I said to myself, crying out, because everything we do, particularly because we have a divine advantage as children of a Most High God, there is that divine advantage that we must have and leverage on, because we already have it, even if we're not leveraging it. We have to. I sat in the lounge and I said to my God, how much longer am I going to keep transiting between Nigeria and Canada? The money that I'm supposed to use to spend feeding my family, I'm traveling up and down because of these issues. How am I going to do this? This is a Canada I didn't even want to come to. So you know how we rant, like it's God's, like God is the one that brought the problem, And then I ranted a bit and all of that, and I was just sitting there. I couldn't eat, I couldn't do anything. I had a paper napkin, maybe a drink. And it was at that point, it was like a heart cry. Nobody even knew what was going on. That paper napkin was what was in my hands, and I believe it was the Holy Spirit. He just gave me a few ideas, and I wrote them on the paper napkin. I still have them till today. It was this CASA Foundation, exactly what I should do. You've been given so much. You've gone to so many places. You've had this opportunity. You've had that opportunity. This is the time to give back. Give back doing what? I'd never run an NGO before. I'd never run a nonprofit before. But that was a story. And that's just the truth of a story. I wrote it down, exactly what was being said. Very, absolutely incredible. Things that you couldn't even think about. I said, how is this going to happen? Well, this God is very funny. Anyway, but I wrote them. I wrote them because, where I came from, they always told us in church, write. Just keep writing it. You don't even know when it will pan out or how it will pan out, but write it. So write, I did, and I came to my husband again, I gave it to him. He laughed and said, what type of money? Do you run an NPO? Do you know exactly what a nonprofit organization is? Anyway, we went on through that. But you know what? By the time they called me back to come again and write some reports about what happened in 2000 and those types of things in Nigeria, I knew immediately that I had to do something drastic to show myself that I was useful also here. And that was exactly when we registered CASA Foundation. Today, CASA Foundation turned 15 years on the 20th of April. It turned 15 years on the 20th of April this year. And we registered it on that day. And so that registration actually was like, for me, an actionable step that gave some sense of purpose to me in Canada. For me, it was just a signal that I had done something and there was something to look forward to. So even when anybody now called me in Nigeria to come and say this or say that, I was coming back to something that needed to be done. So that was for me, my own, that was how CASA Foundation happened for me. Now, the first year CASA Foundation started, I think Mr. Rabiu said, you need help. You need to do good. It's important you do so. We started CASA Foundation. I really didn't know anything about NPOs. I sat with somebody, tell us exactly how this works. Tell us what to do, regulatory requirements, how reporting, how does it work? They shared a few things with me. But being a doer, I think I just called myself a doer. I needed to do something immediately. And the first thing that came to mind was an investment banking platform, because that's my familiar territory. And so we set up the platform called Friends of Africa. Friends of Africa, because I had done a lot of consultation though, community people, gaps in community, what do they need, how, and so on. I know about banking, I know about funding, I know about fundraising, and so on. How can we help? And they were thinking, but how are you going to do it? Nobody wants to work with Nigerians, they won't pay back, you do this. I said, let's set it up first, let's bring people together, and then we gather a few ideas. And that was exactly what I did. We set up the platform in exactly 2011, that same year. Because I had helped a few people managing their accounts, those were the people I quickly mentioned it to. We've set up this platform, and so one of the governors from Nigeria brought his 12-man cabinet. It was his own way. He didn't need to do that, but it was just his own way because we had helped him with managing his accounts effectively where I was before. And that was the first signal, because immediately he came to town, and people knew he was coming to town. Everybody gathered around the conference. I think, there's something about, because you don't see them easily, right? So they came, he was so full, tickets sold out. That was the first time, that was the first year, and we were sold out, and it was at Sheraton, it was at Sheraton Hotel, right there in Mississauga. So that was really great. And since then, even right through the pandemic, they gave us that type of support. They kept coming, we kept selling, and that was how we started getting some income back from that. So my second lesson then is, apart from helping, what do you have? Who have you helped? Can you call out to them? Particularly if you're in transition, you're looking for something to do. Perhaps some people already have it directly written. This is exactly what you should do, like I just mentioned. Some, nobody has the full picture. It's just an idea, and then you keep building it up. Some don't even have a clue, and that's also fine. And that's why we have an advantage, which is a divine advantage, to cry out and say, I need to do something, and these are the things I know to do. The ones I don't know to do, they might actually be the ones that will pan out. In my own case, the MPO really panned out, and I really wanted to share with you how it panned out in my own case. Next slide, please. The first strategy, we need to find a place to serve. That's my own experience. Each person has an experience. A place to serve and then lead. I've been leading all my life, that's the truth. Even as a management trainee, they didn't have the supervisor. And so they put me as head of admin. Maybe because I could speak, they said, go and become the head of admin. It was the same bank. And so that was exactly what I did, and from there rose. When I came into Canada, we have to understand the nuances of the environment in which we found ourselves. And it's about volunteerism. in Canada. You need to serve. You need to find, even if it's as advisory board, finance committee, whatever sector you're familiar with, you need to find a place to serve. That's my own personal experience. It was in the process of doing that then the big NPO started inviting us. Okay, they put up a call for, director role, this and that. And so I joined those directors, sometimes not even knowing what exactly it would entail, but applying some of the director, the skills that I had garnered in my previous working place. And then I applied that to them, not knowing that ultimately we would, form CASA Foundation. And so that was exactly what happened. And then I started serving on some of those boards so that when CASA Foundation started, it was easy for some of them to join the board. I don't know if you get what I mean. So because I didn't know who to call, but there's something here about diversity also. So you're black and all of that. Indeed, it's a black NPO, yes. It's a black business, yes. But in terms of diversity, sometimes you just need to inject a few other groups, like some Chinese, you know what I mean. That's why it's called BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, People of Color. So you put a few of them, it gives some leverage. Because there's some market you're looking to enter. And if you just go there with all of us like we are, sometimes, I don't know if you get what I mean. So sometimes that blocks you off. So that was how we got a few board members on. And then we kept doing what we were doing. We started running a Friends of Africa because we always got people. People will always fill the hall. Tickets sold out, no doubt. However, we still had to spend money ourselves because for people to really believe in what you're doing, sometimes you need to make sure you give some freebies too. And so in the process, we will do that. We'll use some funding leverage from our partners. And then at the end of the day, we were able to hold those events and then it gained some name. By the 4th year, we had the government of Ontario, for the first time, send people to our conference to say, okay, this African group, because remember again, it's all about diversity here, and people want to see, so they wanted to be involved to say, oh, at least, even if it's tokenism they're trying to practice, let's just show that we are there, not funding anything, but just showing up. And indeed, they showed up, and they've been showing up since then. And so, before we knew it, we then were invited to their budget meetings. I bet part of tokenism too, because it was a way of saying we consulted widely before this budget was fully approved. I'm not sure, I'm just saying, so when there's something about that. Everybody, each community has to actually contribute. That's the way Canada is, building consensus and all that. And so we'll be invited to represent the African community. And then when they go to the parliament, the way you see them making the presentation, you have people standing behind them and so on. So those were the things that were happening then. I didn't understand it. I was just going into the room. I'll follow them. They would talk from morning to night. I had no clue. I understood numbers, but I didn't understand the nuances of sector, infrastructure. We're giving this money to infrastructure for the whole year. This is our budget for that. I would listen, and I'm thinking, how is this going to benefit me? But I didn't understand it. But after a while, then I realized that most of the people in the room were NGOs themselves, and they were also getting funded. We exchange cards. We go home. I call them. Nobody responds. And I'm thinking, we were in the same room for 2 hours. Do you remember CASA Foundation? Nobody ever responded to any of those mails. Not because they didn't want to. But I realized much later that it was a click. I had to crack it. And you can only do that if you understand exactly what you're meant to do. Otherwise, you'll be asking all the wrong questions from the wrong people in the wrong places. All right? So it's important for us to understand volunteerism helps you to crack that, because then you begin to work with them. Then you begin to serve on their boats. Then you get to read some of the papers. So you're not stealing anybody's ideas, because I just must, a sound, a note of caution there. But to actually understand the context, the sectors, and then what do you want to do? We don't have to copy exactly, otherwise they become so scared. Anytime they see you come in, they close their books, So for people to really trust you, and that's just a note because I'm talking to us, because it's important to take note of those types of things, all right? Then we need people to follow, we follow, and then we serve, and then we also follow people ourselves. The way we follow people is by seeking mentorship from people who have gone ahead of us. And not only those, from people who are actually coming behind us, because they know so much that we do not ourselves. My daughter, for instance, she's a banker herself now. A few things she knows. I tell her, I know it, you don't worry, you can't even teach me, okay? So take that. Then she says to me, do you know this? So it's a digital aspect of banking, which I didn't do. I'm an investment banker. So she told me that, yeah, fintech, this and that. And I'm thinking, I didn't do this. Of course, I understand the numbers, but I didn't use these tools. Now, those are the things she's using. So you can actually learn from the people coming behind, younger people, and so on. What do they know? What do you need to know? And I'm sure it happens to a lot of us. I mean, we're fiddling with the remote control. We want to switch to this and that. And then we call them, and they say, I'm coming. You know, the children I'm talking about, they finally show up after a while, and then they help us, to solve that in a minute. What we've been trying and fiddling with for so long. Next slide, please. Thank you. So strategy to fill the gaps. We have a unique lens. We need to see the unmet needs, which is why we set up the Friends of Africa that I talked about. So who are these underserved funders? Everyone has a solution you can offer because we have skills, we have competencies, we have talents. So how are we going to do this in a way that, even though we're volunteering, they can see the skills and the competencies that we bring to the table. And then you become someone of value, of worth to them. Without solutions, proffering some solutions, it's usually very difficult for people to remember you. Nobody remembers. I know for sure that we talk about racism, a lot of schisms, and all of these isms. You know what I mean? I never trivialize them. I understand they're there, okay? But you know what? Our solutions become the bridge. There is nobody who's going to look at you any less. Once you put a solution on the table, they look for you, they call you. It's been my experience. It's not even the donation. Otherwise, and I'm sure you know, we have BIPOC, POC, and so on, and you see the donation. You know what I mean? So when they say, but they have solutions, and people reckon with them. We need to think solutions more, and we need to understand that there are so many underserved people around us, even within our immediate families and nuclear, we call them the nanos, like smaller groups, micro groups, and so on. Find somebody you can mentor. The gentleman talked about mentorship. This is really important. And all of this, all funded by the government, but without the funding, I bet you are mentoring people one way or the other without even knowing it. Yes. We don't need funding to do that. We're funded to do that, no doubt. But you can hold somebody from your immediate ecosystem, your community, your tribe, people around you, and you could do that for them. All right? I put here, live for approval. If you live for approval, you will die unfulfilled. Because in the process of doing all of this, I need to mention a note of caution too. Because a lot of us, yes, the racism is there, so you're looking for approval, you fail to do what you're supposed to do. Because you're trying to pander to the ego of so many people. Respect is important. Do not pander to the ego of anyone. I never recommend it anywhere I go. Why? Because wisdom is key. To know exactly what you know, and to know exactly what you do not know, and to know how to find solutions to what you don't have or you don't know. That's the role of the mentors. They are the bridge. What you think you need to know now, and you don't know it. Find a mentor to cover it. And cultivate that relationship so well that they will actually be eager to give the solution to you. But, are we mentorable too? So that's a question we should ask from time to time. We really become unstoppable when we have these solutions on the table, and our solutions, people can place a value on the solutions that we have. So how do we build solutions that people can place a value on? Because they pay for those solutions. Next slide, please. So that's how we fill the gaps. Then build ecosystems. Ecosystems, basically, collaboration, the collective. Speak about the collective from time to time. I know a lot of groups. Canada is about ecosystems, actually. They prefer for you to come as a group. A lot of people don't know, and that's what I meant when I said a lot of people actually, it's better to be innovative, carve a niche, a niche area for yourself, and go along and push that. You can see something people are doing, you can replicate those things, but know exactly what your own area is. I can make it better in this way. So that becomes your niche area. But you do it, you badmouth the person doing it before you, and then you finish the whole market, And so sometimes people are looking at you like, oh, if you did that to that person, are you going to do it? We have to be mindful of, just very soft, little things, but they matter. They matter. And the reason I say they matter is there was a particular situation where somebody said to us, we're not going to give this to your whole group because 20 people came from your group. And when they say group, they're talking about Nigerian community. And said, but this person, you gave this to this person. You gave this to this group. You gave that to this group. So we're coming. And they saw 20 applications on that particular application, call for application. I'm talking about funding. I'm talking about funding. And so they denied everyone. So they didn't actually look at the people who had substance in their own. That's what that does, because you've got to be very structured in your approach when we talk about funding, and when we talk about financing, and so on. Connect with founders, with funding, mentors, leaders, and build businesses. He already spoke about legacy. I'm not going to talk about that. Can I have the next slide, please? I'm going to quickly share this. Live the learned lessons. It was after we did all of this that we now got a big break. So I quickly talk about that. We'd been pushing, giving, mentorship, this and that. We weren't funding anyone. We couldn't even fund ourselves. We were just giving what we knew to do in kind. Mentor people, give them information, banking, investment, whatever, connect them. And then because the global financial crisis happened, what's it called, COVID-19? Yes, it happened around 2020, as you recall. At that point, at the beginning of 2020, in February, the former prime minister had called for black leaders and all the ambassadors of African descent. He wanted to have a meeting, knowing what they were doing. And we were invited because of those things that they had seen us do, this platform, this one, so they put us on the list. We went. We had that meeting in February 24th, 2020. And in that meeting gave us an opportunity to launch another program because of what we learned. And they came down to Toronto to launch it with us. It's called Women Inspire. And it was launched by one of the cabinet ministers. It was 5 days after launching that platform that they closed the entire system. Shut down because of COVID and so on. But one thing for sure, the name had already registered because it had been launched. And so when in August 2020, they were calling for applications for people to manage the 401 million Black Entrepreneurship Program, we were invited to apply for it because we already saw a few things that had been done and we had launched the program and so on. And that's how, on the 13th of October, 2020, 30 organizations were approved to manage the Black Entrepreneurship Program of 401 million. The banks followed suit and created maybe 100 under their own black funds and so on. But the federal government's own portion of it was 401. And 190 out of it was is being managed by some people who give out loans, And so that was what we were doing. Throughout the pandemic, it was a game changer for us. The pandemic that swept a lot of things away actually redefined us. And so we started doing that. But, it didn't happen like that. We had been doing the work progressively since, 2011. And so we were able to execute, and that was how we started training. But we knew we couldn't do everything like that alone. And so we started reaching out, grassroots organizations, Ghana, Uganda, and so on. Who do we know? We don't know too many. We started attending their events. We connected to them. The president of this, the president of that. We have this funding. We need to do it. So we've got to learn to collaborate and share. It was in the process. Because I'm a structured person because of my background, I decided to go with only chambers of commerce. I didn't go with, association of this. Chambers of commerce will have a fair idea of how to do things under a good structure. And that was how we were able to get a lot of founders to train, to mentor, and to do. And we became a national organization on account of that. Only 4 of us out of the 30 were given that model to run nationally. And so we had to reach out again to some other institutions to say, in BC, so today we have BC, we have an office there, we have in Ottawa, we have in Montreal, and running all of those programs through that. On the 25th of November, 2024, I was invited to the parliament, and that's the picture right there with me. And I was asked, you have to sit in front of us and tell us exactly how you got 9,000 people to help, and how you were able to get funding for 100 of them. 100 is a lot in Canada. Maybe where we're coming from may not be. It's a lot, actually. So you not only trained them, you were able to fund them, was the issue. How did you do that? And so when I was invited to speak about that, I said to them, and I'm going to wrap up, perhaps I'm going to try and wrap up, I say I'm almost out of time. And I said to them, where we came from, we are not known to borrow They didn't train us to come and borrow and spend borrowed money. Like money you don't have, you don't spend. That's the way our mothers trained us, at least from where I came. And so I explained it to them that when we come to Canada, you reorientate us to begin to borrow. And a lot of people sometimes actually spend money that is on credit card without even knowing they need to pay back. And so they've messed up their credit facilities from the get-go. I mean, maybe if you schooled here, that's a different story. But, for some of us that came, grown adults, that's the way we were trained. And so forcing people to really take all this money. If you don't have your full money, you're not going to build a house in the part of Africa that I came from. So you need to have that. So all these programs that you keep giving and forcing on people, is there a way that you can actually modify it and make it culturally compliant? I'm talking about, like your culture. What do they do? How does it work? And so on. And so we started telling them that. Of course, you have the traditional money deposit banks. That's fine. That's their role. But not everybody wants to borrow 50K. Not everybody wants to borrow 25K. Some people do not need more than 3 to get started. You pump so much into their hands, they misbehave. And before you know it, it becomes a problem to get it back. So we started telling them about all of this, and they were like, oh, I think the Chinese are like you, the Indians are like you, and so on. But you know what? The Women Entrepreneurship Strategy, they said that's being tested now. So it's a program for $8 billion, which is managed by the Women Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub. We're a part of that. And so that is being customized now to try and see how women can access little amounts of money. They would rather start with the women. Of course, we already have the blacks, because they think they are, like more conservative, like they can manage and pay back. So that is being modified to come out of that program. And so that was a pivotal moment for me, because what it showed me then was, in Canada, we have a voice. We are migrants of destiny anyway. We have a voice. You can't lobby yourself to go and for them to come and call you anyway. They will screen you, they will do before you go in and all that. And they were pumping the questions. And it's on their Parliament TV. If anybody is interested, we can show. Those questions were so hard. In fact, I prayed, I must confess. I said, because I didn't know it was being streamed live. So by the time they threw the 5th question, I was like, how do you answer this, knowing that other people are watching? But I knew that it was a defining moment for us, because if you don't answer correctly, you could change, you might not be able to make the impact that you're supposed to make. And so those, for me, were pivotal moments. And I really said to myself, this is really worth it. Even if you're not being paid to have been doing all this work all this while, but it was really worth it. Because at the end of the day, what are we really looking for? Somebody to invest their time, their talent in us, their money, but then they've invested now in us, and they're really still investing. And so on account of that also, they announced in that November also again that some of the programs that we're running, that they were renewing. I think it was announced publicly, so I can say about 189 million for the black community, for all of us, So we got that, and that is really great for us. So today, the lessons that I have shared, based on helping people, based on getting mentorship, based on honing our skills, and then using that for the benefit of the community, so that we can also stand and be one of those people that can actually tell them. Not everybody perhaps would have an opportunity to tell them what to do and so on, but you could belong to an ecosystem and submit your input and say, look, take it there and tell them this is how we want to do it, and so on. Even if they don't listen, maybe half will get done, or 20% will get done, and I think that is quite instructive. Today, I just wanted to wrap up by saying to us that for us, sometimes we think it's very late as we're starting. My own story is, there were several times I asked myself, how are the mighty falling? I definitely have to share that with you. I would tell myself again, Canada. How are because Canada can be a leveler. I say, how are the mighty falling? Because sometimes I'm doing some things, I'm thinking, it could never happen where I'm coming from. And that's just the truth. It could never happen to me. So I said to myself, the mighty. And then sometimes the Holy Spirit, that's the advantage also that we have in Christ. And sometimes the Holy Spirit will remind you again and say, look. Because it was in the process. I got my doctorate, my PhD. I finished it from university. I came, and then I got better insights of how things are done. Yeah, not everything is a title. Not everything is, like all the accolades, which is good. I mean, people have to be celebrated and we have to do that. But I'm just saying we don't live based on that. We do the work in spite of that. Whether we're celebrated or not, we just keep at it. Because God will then trust us with so much more. That's how I saw this one anyway, because I said to myself, what am I doing here? God, don't let me fail you today. Let me just say this thing exactly the way it should be said without being, because I can actually be very, yeah. So anyway, I said some of the things and then I left. But what that has now taught me is that nothing is too late. Everybody has a season. Even when you think that things have been so disappointing, things didn't work out, or it didn't pan out, and so on. There are 3 seasons in anybody's life: the morning, the afternoon, and the night. We have to determine which season of our lives are we at. What we were supposed to do in the morning, if we missed it, are we able to maximize it quickly, maximize the opportunity of the afternoon, and get those things done? What we're supposed to do in the night, though, when the night represents like tiredness, sunset, and so on. This is a time now. And that was the point we were trying to make to them yesterday at Carlton, to say, the Africa we want, Agenda 2064, let it start now. Because a lot of people do not have the patience to wait till 2064. Perhaps a few people won't even see what's going to happen in 2064. So why are we not starting now? It's great. Lofty idea. Have your, of course, I know, smart goals. Set it. But a lot can happen now. Don't wait till 2064. And that's how I'm going to wrap up today, to say this is a time for us. Thank you again, everyone.